Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story is one that many believed would never happen, or at least not so soon. Moscow, the heart of Russian political power, the symbol of Kremlin authority, and the city long portrayed as untouchable, suddenly finds itself at the center of shock, fear, and burning questions. As flames light up parts of the Russian capital and emergency sirens echo through streets that once felt immune to war, the world is asking a single urgent question. How did Ukraine manage to hit Moscow, and what does this mean for Vladimir Putin's strategy of pushing the region toward chaos? For years, the Kremlin narrative insisted that the war would remain far from Russian daily life. Television anchors reassured viewers that Russia was strong, protected, and in control. The front lines were supposed to be distant, somewhere beyond the horizon. Somewhere Ukrainians would suffer, but Russians would only watch on screens. That illusion cracked the moment reports began to surface of explosions, fires, and security lockdowns in and around Moscow. Even if details remain contested, the psychological impact is undeniable. The idea that Ukraine could reach the Russian capital represents a dramatic shift in how this war is experienced, not just by soldiers, but by civilians, elites, and the power structures surrounding Putin himself. To understand the significance of this moment, we need to step back and look at how Moscow has functioned symbolically throughout this conflict. Moscow is not just another city. It is the seat of government, the home of the Kremlin, the nerve center where decisions about war, peace, economy, and propaganda are made. Any sign of vulnerability, there challenges the carefully constructed image of absolute control. For Ukraine, striking Moscow is not only a tactical move, it is a strategic message. No place is beyond reach, and no narrative of invulnerability can remain intact forever. Reports of the strike, whether involving drones, sabotage, or precision long-range capabilities, triggered immediate reactions across Russia. Airports were temporarily shut down, flights delayed or diverted. Air defense systems were activated, sometimes firing into the night sky above residential areas. Social media filled with videos showing smoke rising over districts that many Russians had only associated with normal life, shopping centers, offices, and apartment blocks. Even when state media rushed to downplay the damage, the images told their own story. Panic, confusion, and anger spread faster than any official explanation could contain. For ordinary Russians, this moment carries deep emotional weight. Many had supported or at least tolerated the war because it felt distant. The costs seemed abstract, framed as patriotic sacrifice or necessary defense against imagined threats. But when the war arrives at your doorstep, when you hear explosions instead of speeches, and when your children ask why the sky is filled with sirens, abstract narratives collapse. Fear replaces ideology, and personal safety becomes more important than political slogans. From Ukraine's perspective, the strike on Moscow represents a calculated escalation. Kiev has long argued that Russia only understands strength and consequences. By demonstrating the ability to hit targets deep inside Russian territory, Ukraine aims to disrupt not just military logistics, but also the political confidence of the Kremlin. It sends a signal to Russian elites that the war is no longer something they can manage from behind thick walls and guarded compounds. It also reassures Ukrainian citizens that their country is not merely surviving, but adapting, innovating, and striking back in ways that reshape the balance of psychological power. This moment also exposes cracks in Russia's air defense narrative. For years, Putin's government invested heavily in showcasing advanced missile systems and layered defenses, claiming Russia's skies were among the most secure in the world. A successful strike on or near Moscow raises uncomfortable questions. Were defenses overwhelmed? Were systems misallocated to protect frontline assets instead of the capital? Or does this reveal deeper systemic problems, such as corruption, outdated technology, or poor coordination? Each possibility undermines confidence not only among civilians, but within the military itself. Internationally, the reaction has been swift and intense. Western capitals are watching closely, analyzing what this means for escalation risks and deterrence dynamics. Some worry that strikes on Moscow could provoke harsher Russian responses, including intensified attacks on Ukrainian cities or even threats involving unconventional weapons. Others argue that this is precisely the pressure needed to force Moscow to reconsider its approach. The idea that Russia can wage war without consequence at home is increasingly untenable, and many believe that confronting this reality may shorten the conflict rather than prolong it. Putin, meanwhile, faces one of the most difficult moments of his presidency. His leadership style has always relied on projecting strength, control, and inevitability. The image of Moscow under threat clashes directly with that persona. In response, the Kremlin has doubled down on rhetoric, blaming foreign conspiracies, accusing the West of orchestrating chaos, and promising swift retaliation. Yet, behind closed doors, the calculations are far more complex. How does a leader maintain authority when the core promise of security is visibly shaken? There is also the question of internal politics. Russian elites, oligarchs, and regional power brokers have largely aligned behind Putin because stability served their interests. Sanctions were painful but manageable as long as the center held. A Moscow strike changes that equation. If the capital itself can be targeted, then nowhere is truly safe. This may not lead to immediate rebellion or collapse, but it introduces doubt, and doubt is dangerous for authoritarian systems built on loyalty and fear. For Ukraine, the risks are real and acknowledged. Kiev understands that striking Moscow could invite severe retaliation. Ukrainian cities have already endured devastating attacks on infrastructure, energy grids, and civilian neighborhoods. Yet Ukrainian leaders argue that restraint has never spared them from suffering. In their view, demonstrating reach and resolve is a necessary step to force a recalculation in Moscow. The goal is not indiscriminate destruction, but strategic pressure, making the continuation of war increasingly costly for Russia's leadership. On the streets of Moscow, reactions have been mixed. Some residents express anger at Ukraine and the West, demanding harsher measures and more aggressive responses. Others quietly question why this is happening at all, why Russia is fighting a war that now threatens their own safety. These conversations, often whispered rather than shouted, reflect a subtle but important shift. When fear enters daily life, propaganda loses some of its power. The role of technology in enabling this strike cannot be ignored. Ukraine has invested heavily in developing and adapting drones, long-range systems, and unconventional methods of warfare. This innovation reflects a broader trend in modern conflict, where smaller or less resource rich nations can leverage technology to challenge traditional military hierarchies. Moscow's experience serves as a warning to all major powers. Distance and size no longer guarantee security. Media control has become another battleground. Russian state outlets work overtime to minimize the significance of the strike, emphasizing quick responses and limited damage. Independent journalists and foreign media, however, focus on the symbolism and implications. In the digital age, controlling the narrative is nearly impossible, especially when civilians themselves upload videos and first-hand accounts. Every clip of smoke over Moscow chips away at the official story. As the world absorbs this moment, attention turns to what comes next. Will Russia escalate further, expanding its campaign in ways that risk broader regional instability? Will Ukraine continue to target symbolic locations to maintain psychological pressure? Or will this shock push both sides closer to negotiations, however distant that possibility may seem today? History shows that wars often change course after moments that shatter assumptions, and this could be one of those moments. There is also a humanitarian dimension that must not be overlooked. Civilians on both sides continue to pay the highest price. Ukrainian families endure daily bombardment, displacement, and loss, while Russian civilians now face a taste of the insecurity their government unleashed. While accountability for aggression remains essential, so too does compassion for ordinary people caught in the crossfire of geopolitical ambition. The strike on Moscow also reverberates beyond Europe. Countries around the world are watching closely, drawing lessons about deterrence, escalation, and the limits of power. Allies of Russia may reconsider the reliability of its security guarantees. Adversaries may feel emboldened by the demonstration that even heavily defended capitals are not immune. The global order, already strained, feels another tremor. For Putin, the phrase "pushing to chaos" takes on new meaning. The chaos he sought to export beyond Russia's borders is now reflecting back inward. Managing that chaos will test every lever of control the Kremlin possesses. Repression may increase, censorship may tighten, and military posturing may grow more aggressive. But fear, once unleashed, is difficult to contain. Ukraine's message through this strike is clear. Resilience, adaptation, and reach define its strategy. It is not merely reacting but shaping the psychological battlefield. By forcing Moscow to confront vulnerability, Ukraine challenges the assumption that power flows only one way. This does not guarantee victory, but it reshapes the terms of the struggle. As we move forward, one thing is certain. The war has entered a new phase. The distance between front lines and capitals has narrowed, not geographically, but psychologically. Moscow in flames, whether literal or symbolic, marks a turning point that will be studied, debated, and remembered. The choices made in the days and weeks ahead will determine whether this moment leads to deeper chaos or the first cracks in a path toward ending the conflict. Thank you for staying with us through this in-depth analysis. If you found this breakdown valuable, don't forget to support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Stay informed, stay critical, and we'll see you in the next video with more updates as this story continues to unfold.